Yes, my name is Mariia MEZENTSEVA. I am a member of Ukrainian parliament and I am a head of the parliamentary delegation to the Council of Europe.
And we're here in Strasbourg at the Council of Europe. It's annual, almost annual Forum for Democracy. And the theme this year is, can democracy save the environment? What do you think?
You know, I think it can, definitely. When I was here a couple of years ago participating, being a city councillor, not in the position of putting forward the national legislations, but still an influencer, and the topic was gender equality. I think everything in a mix presents a democracy, which is fair representation and inclusion. So it's not just a matter of decision-making for majority, but the interests of minorities as well, with different kinds of necessities. And today we've discussed it as philosophers, naming different historians and their approaches to the very notion of what democracy is. But today we're talking more about the climate and the challenge of the current days, not something that is virtually in the future.
What are the greatest challenges the world faces on the environmental front?
As the biggest country in the subcontinent of Europe, Ukraine does face various climate challenges. It hasn't started today. It started back in the days with the Chernobyl catastrophe in the 80s, which influenced also the challenges of climate at a global scale. Currently, we have passed several law initiatives together with the aligned committees, government, president. They are coinciding with the very important issues like waste management law. It touches upon the communities at the local level, which will be governing this process locally. The very beginning of our consumption as citizens to the very end of making it a reuse and of course reducing the effect for economy. It is an attraction of foreign investments as well, but of course we're talking about big companies which are influenced parliamentarians who did not, that's why we did not manage to vote upon several laws. We will do it again on the emissions and CO2 emissions not only, but we have committed ourselves officially. Ukraine has opened the door or entered to an open door of a Green Deal agreement voluntarily. And that's why we, while passing the budget and planning the budget, we put ahead the figures which are linked directly to industries and climate.
You say your government is doing a lot on the environmental front. Do you think worldwide governments are generally up to the challenge? Are they doing enough, or can they do enough to meet the challenge of global warming and climate change?
If I may say, and I haven't said it at the plenary, climate is a sexy topic right now. There are so many people who are concerned, but I think there has to be more people who act and react on these matters. And of course, politicians, lawmakers, decision makers are one of the several ones, because we can't exclude a fourth power, as we call them in Ukraine, journalists. It is about revealing the information, and it's about the access to information, a very true one, which can put a company or a factory plant under the sanction, or it has to pay some payments in the courts for the citizens, the rights of which were breached because of their activities. And it's a global approach, which I think is very trendy in Ukraine. And it was very interesting for me to see who were not voting for several ecological laws which were initiated by the president, but they are still on the table. We are finalizing them, and I am very sure that Ukrainian parliament will have a will to proceed.
And you were participating in the debate just now. You probably listened to the other sessions earlier today. What have you heard so far that's really inspired you? Or well, let's start with what have you heard so far that really impressed you about what you've heard so far, and what has really inspired you today?
You know, I have a very simple philosophy. If you have two hands, two legs, and a head, and you're functioning more or less okay, it is a great day today. And therefore, it's about our health issues which many people are facing now, not only because of the COVID, but the things we are doing right now will affect generations in a longer time in the future. Today I wasn't depressed, I was definitely inspired by very young faces which were representing different democracies across the world, not only democracies of course, and it's a matter of them making it to travel to here, to exchange the views, but I think the most important is happening behind the scenes during the networks, and I have managed to exchange several contacts. We already planned a Zoom meeting with some young representatives of civil society, which I also used to represent, to get in touch not only for some Facebook links and friendships, but for the action. I am sure you cannot exchange everything you want to within the 2 hours of the panel, but that's why the forum lasts longer than that.
This morning we had a...
Your mic's fallen off.
Sorry.
Mine is here, okay.
I'm not very good at that, but it doesn't matter. They're not interested in what I say, they're interested in what you say, so your mic is okay. Yeah, this morning there was an interesting point made. The first people who spoke, the guy from the Pew Research,
Yeah.
and he said that in the past couple of years,
Concern is rising, yeah?
the trust in government to do the right thing to meet the challenge of global warming has gone down, but the trust in experts to do something about it has gone up. Would you say that's the case in Ukraine and more generally? Is that a problem or is that a...
I think we are a great example in this matter because ministers, parliamentarians, the team of those who are the real decision makers are representatives of the civil society, some businesses which were eco-oriented or still are. And of course, it's a matter of fact that they are in power right now. That's why I think for us, it's not as hard to promote eco-initiatives because everyone is super inspired, starting from constituencies and doing something like, let's say we do every year a collection of trash next to the lake. Last year we've collected 4 tons in 1 hour, in 60 minutes. This year we've collected 8 tons of litter, which means people started, polluting twice more. But the activism of these movements grew dramatically in a very positive way. And we're not just, collecting litter to give medals to those who collected like the most, and the children are participating. But it's about the issues of education, which were just mentioned, the issues of the laws which we pass, and which amendments are in the final text. Are we ruining something to create more sufficient circular economies while something is harmed in terms of producers, but they have some time to re-establish their businesses, because of course ruining is not creating, so we have to consider the interest of all as much as we can. That's why I think our methods of bringing working groups together, doing the public hearings, world cafes we call them, we spend time on that, but at the same time we proceed fast with the votes.
One final question. What lessons can we learn from the way the world and countries across the world work together during the pandemic, the COVID crisis? What lessons from that can be taken from that to help the countries and international organizations work together to fight climate change?
I think it was very sad to see back in 2020 how countries with lower GDP had the lower access to vaccines and all the medical means to fight COVID. It's not because their people are worse than those one living in Europe, for instance, but it's because the co-help and coexistence were not at place at that moment. So we didn't realize how long it will last and how badly it will affect everyone.
But if I may interrupt, it took some time, but they eventually did start working
It
together.
did, yeah, absolutely.
It's not perfect. African countries, for example, are not away from them getting vaccinated, but there is something in place and they have worked together. So are there any lessons from that which you can transfer to the global fight against climate change?
I think it's the information, disinformation, and awareness. If we talk about protocols on how we cure COVID, they are more or less the same across the world, right? Because we're fighting the same thing. I think it can be done also for the climate change, but sometimes a country which has higher incomes, higher GDP per person, has more resources. And in this matter, I can only say that Ukraine is participating in international initiatives when it doesn't only ask, but also gives some impact on our side. I think the very recent ones is the trees planting. It's an initiative which has a grassroots in the social activism and socially responsible business. And it grew into a massive initiative supported by the chairmanship of the president and not only. And we managed to unite 142 countries across the globe for forestering their lands. And we've planted together with member states of the Council of Europe, and not only 15 million trees. It's been done throughout the last 2 years.
15 or
15 million trees. It was conducted during the pandemic, 2020, 2021. So I think we can be united in different manners which are affecting the climate change, or let's say fighting the climate change, because we do know that forestering does affect our, not only what we see on the planet, but the air and the resources as well.
Thank you very much.
Likewise, thank you. It was a pleasure.